Summer isn't quite over yet, but I've been craving autumn for weeks now. Perhaps it's just that time of the year when I start wanting slower mornings, cozy food, and a little reset. I'm Anna. 9 years ago, I left the city and moved to the countryside. Since then, our little family has grown. We're three now, soon to be four. And after 14 months of traveling, we're finally back on our little island. We've moved into a new place, and it's still missing those little things that make a house feel like home. Flowers on the table, something slowly baking in the oven, a few familiar things finding their place. And honestly, I'm really enjoying taking my time with it. Come and spend a few cozy days with me as we settle in and slowly get ready for autumn. I've been getting into pumpkin mode lately. Perhaps I'll wait until autumn to make something creative with pumpkin, but today I'm making a simple vegetable roast for dinner. I like making things like this when I need to use up leftover vegetables. Everything goes into the oven. I always add the chickpeas halfway through though, because I don't want them to burn. And honestly, if you've never topped roasted vegetables with olives or feta, you should try it. It's so good. I'm serving it alongside some fish cakes for an easy and healthy dinner. Oh my goodness, I'm like sweating my eyes out. It's been so hot lately, and today is around 35 degrees Celsius, which is over 100 Fahrenheit. So it's pretty hot, and I'm not dealing very well with the heat, being almost 32 weeks pregnant. So we've decided to take a little bit of a drive up to the mountains, and hopefully it's gonna be a little bit cooler up there. I really hope so. One of my favorite ways to slow down is going for a walk in the forest. There is just something about being surrounded by trees that makes everything feel a little quieter. I brought a book with me this time and found a place to sit outside and read for a while. Honestly, I never manage very much, usually just a few pages before I start looking at the trees or listening to the birds. But that's alright. I'm not trying to finish the book. I just like having these little moments where I'm not rushing towards the next thing. A walk, a book, a little fresh air. Sometimes that's enough for a reset. So we've made it to the mountains, and apparently the heat is everywhere. I don't know, I don't want to complain, but recently I've been thinking a lot about how I tolerate heat. Of course I'm pregnant, for sure, it's a different story, but maybe I should move somewhere with a colder climate. Anyway, the guys went for a walk, my husband and my 3-year-old daughter. They gave me this time for reading. I have the book I told you about in my previous videos. So I'm about to have these 10 minutes for myself and my book and enjoy some greenery. But yeah, it feels like, I need to live somewhere, maybe in the English countryside, I don't know. Somewhere colder and just, I don't know. I'm rambling. I'm sorry, I'm rambling a lot today. We're going to enjoy this afternoon here in the mountains. Hopefully it gets a little bit cooler later, we'll see. And tomorrow I have a very exciting project planned. So I invite you to my kitchen and we'll see. how this experiment will go. We are getting into that preserving time of the year, and I've got a few kilos of plums to use up. I don't usually do a huge amount of preserving, partly because we live in such a mild climate and I honestly can get hold of most fresh produce throughout the year. But there are still certain things that only really appear in summer though. All the stone fruit, for example. Peaches, nectarines, apricots, plums. I love stone fruit, and last year I froze quite a lot of peaches. They were so handy over the colder months. Whenever I needed something quick, I could take a bag out of the freezer and make a crumble or a simple cake. There is something lovely about opening the freezer in the winter and finding a little piece of summer waiting there. So this year I thought I would do the same with the plums. I'm just washing them, cutting them in half, so slices, and taking the stones out. Some of them are already very soft, so I'm trying to be careful. Although to be honest, quite a few have disappeared while I've been preparing them. They're just so good and so sweet. Once they're ready, I'll divide them into a few bags and put them in the freezer. I like freezing them in portions, so I can take out only what I need later. I'll probably use them for crumbles, cakes, or perhaps some kind of plum dessert when the weather gets cooler. It's not the most exciting kind of preserving, I suppose. There are no beautiful jars or labels involved, but it's simple and it works. And sometimes that's exactly what I need. A few bags of plums tucked away for later, ready to remind us of these warm summer days when autumn arrives. Good morning, friends. I am finishing my cup of coffee and I am very excited because today we're gonna be making some plum jam. It's one of those things that I really love in homemaking process. I love taking seasonal produce and finding a way to keep it around for a little longer. So today we're gonna be making some jam. I made some jam in the past, but usually it was this kind of jam that you just keep in the fridge, the lazy one. I think I've done a proper canning once or twice. I made this beautiful thick and balsamic jam and it was a success. However, today I don't have my canning jars here. We've been traveling for 14 months. We've been traveling to Australia and New Zealand, and all our belongings, including the jars, are stored away. And I have not gone looking into them yet. So I have only 2 jars that potentially may work. I'm not sure. One is really big, 1 liter jar, and another one is probably damaged. So it's gonna be an experiment. We will see. And there is another thing, another potential problem. I don't like very sweet jams. I'm not into sugar, so I want to use as little sugar as possible. And that's the problem, because if you want to make a jam that can be stored away in the cupboards for months, you need to use quite a lot of sugar. And I don't want my jam to taste like sugar. I want it to taste like plums. So, 2 problems. We will see if it's gonna work or not, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna be delicious, right? As I was preserving these plums, I kept thinking about my granny. She used to preserve so much from the garden when I was little. Every summer there would be something going on in her kitchen. Jars everywhere, fruit bubbling on the stove, vegetables being washed and chopped, and that really lovely smell of everything slowly cooking. She made jams, pickles and compotes. I remember there was always something being put away for later. At the time, I didn't really think much about it. It was just what happened in summer. You grew things, you pick them when they're ready, and then you try to make them last through the colder months. But now, of course, I look back at it a little differently. There was something so special about that rhythm. The garden gave you all this food at once, and you had to pay attention. You could not just leave it there for weeks and come back to it whenever you feel like it. When something was ready, you had to use it. And then, months later, you'd open a jar and suddenly have a little reminder of summer in the middle of winter. I especially loved her pickled tomatoes. She would serve them with a potato mash and roast dinner. I remember how good they tasted on a cold winter evening. Yeah. There is something about pickles that makes a simple meal feel so comforting. The sharpness of them alongside something warm and soft. Such a good combination. So I suppose making this jam is bringing back a lot of those memories for me. Although I'm doing this in my own slightly improvised way, I don't really like very sweet jam. So I'm using about 500 grams of sugar for a little over 2 kilos of plums. I know that's much less sugar than you would usually use, but I don't know. I don't want the jam to taste like sugar with a little bit of plum in it. I want it to taste like the fruit, a little tart, quite rich, and still very much like summer. The plums have already released so much juice and the color is just beautiful. As they start to cook, everything becomes softer and darker and the whole kitchen begins to smell warm and fruity. I do love this part. You put something very simple in a pot and then you just stand there for a while, stirring it and watching it change. It doesn't happen immediately, the fruit needs time, and I suppose that's another thing preserving teaches you. You can't really rush it, you can't turn up the heat, but you still have to wait for the fruit to soften and for everything to come together. I'm not trying to make a huge amount, just a couple of jars to keep in the fridge and enjoy over the couple of weeks. It's definitely not a perfect traditional batch of jam, but I think that's alright. It doesn't have to be perfect to be delicious, and it doesn't have to last forever to be worth making. Sometimes it's enough to use what you have, remember the people who taught you these things, and make something that brings a little bit of summer into an ordinary day. Okay, I wanted to show you these lamps that I actually made myself. Yeah, they're such beautiful lamps. Before we left for Australia, we used to live in a much bigger house and I made pottery on my balcony there. It was such a beautiful chapter of my life. I was completely self-taught and I was always experimenting. And of course, I had so much time before having kids. But yeah, perhaps I'm feeling a little bit nostalgic and sad because we sold our kiln last year. So it's done, it's finished, but at least I have those beautiful pieces for myself to enjoy. And those lamps, they were a complete experiment. And I think they turned out pretty good. Look at those beautiful details. It was quite a challenge to find them, actually. It turned out pretty nice. Not sure if you can hear, I'm out of breath. And it's a little bit annoying. Let me show you the next one. I really like the shape of this shade. I think it's really cute. But maybe I should switch them around. I don't know. My babies. These are my babies. I'm not sure about which one to keep on which lamp. Shall I switch them around? Maybe take the white shade and put on this lamp? What do you think, guys? I don't know. Shall we do that? Or shall we keep them like that? Always hard decision for me. Actually, I have a third one in the storage, but I don't have a shade for her just yet. Maybe I should make it myself, DIY or something like that, or buy it. Anyway, these two are ready, and I really need to get rid of this one because we're living in a rental and it's just not the prettiest one. There are lots of ugly things, including this lamp and this sofa. I don't like this sofa, I don't like the color, I don't like the fabric, but I actually ordered a few bits and pieces really budget friendly to make a little bit of makeover here, but they're still on the way, so maybe next week they will be delivered and we can do a little bit of a makeover for this sofa and make it a bit cozy and feel like home. Yeah. Oh, another thing that I want to show you guys. This candelabra candle holder, which I also made, and it was one of the very first pieces I made. It's so chunky, but it looks pretty cool, I think, and it has a lot of space for the melting wax, so I just need some candles. And another thing I'm waiting in the mail is the boxes with our stuff from Australia. It's been a few months since we sent them, so they should be delivered very soon, and I have a bunch of beeswax candles in there. So we're preparing for the autumn and winter and making this space really nice and cozy, and it's getting dark a bit early these days, which is so lovely. I'm really craving this next season, honestly. And yeah, we will need some lights, some candles, some lamps. So I'm very excited for those cozy evenings at home. Well, the jam is ready, and I have to say, my attempt at proper preserving did not exactly work out. I tried boiling the smaller jar, but it started leaking, so I suppose that one definitely was not the right kind of jar for preserving. And with the bigger jar, I decided not to bother boiling it at all. It was not full, so there would have been quite a lot of air inside, and I didn't really feel confident about it. So both jars went straight into the fridge, which is probably for the best anyway. And quite honestly, I don't think this jam was ever going to last long enough to be stored away. The next morning I had some slice of sourdough with butter, and it was so good. The jam was slightly tart because I did not use very much sugar, and it tasted so beautifully of plums. Then the butter melted into the warm bread and everything just came together. By the time I looked again, half of the smaller jar was already gone. I'm not saying who ate it, but I'm sure it was a group effort. And there is something so comforting about this combination. Sourdough, butter and jam, it's such a simple breakfast, but it's a classic for a reason. And perhaps this is actually the best way for this jam to be enjoyed. Not sitting on the shelf for months, but being opened in the morning and eating while it's still so fresh. The flowers I bought last week are looking a little sad now, so I think it's time to get some new ones. There is a small farmer's market in town not so far from us, and there is one little flower stand that I always like to visit. It's not a huge market, and there usually isn't a massive selection, but honestly, I don't need anything too special. Even a simple bunch of flowers can make such a difference. Especially when you are still settling into this house. The rooms are quite bare at the moment, and I'm slowly trying to make them feel a little warmer and more like ours. I love putting flowers in the vase I made and finding a place for them. Such a small thing, but it makes the kitchen feel happy. I suppose that's one of the easiest ways to make a house feel like home. Thank you for spending these quiet days with me while we get ready for autumn. And if you're wondering what to do while summer is still here, watch my previous video before summer slips away. I made a little list of simple things I don't want to miss. And I'll see you next week. Bye!